exhibit this in 20 years' time, it's still going to be relevant. I think there's still going to be people going to be able to associate with it, understand it, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of people. I lived in Zambia, and then I lived in Michigan and Zambia again, and then various cities here in England.
My mother's English, my father's Iranian. When I was 2, we moved from England and went to Iran.
I came over in 1964 from India. I was about 4 years old.
My mum was quite controversial because in Zambia you don't leave your husband. And it's common knowledge that they have concubines and affairs and this, that and the other, but you don't ever leave your husband. And she made like front page news because she left my dad.
Most people in the village are farmers, and the village is very small and isolated. And there are probably about maybe 30 households.
Iran wasn't a good country for 3 daughters, and he wanted us to be able to speak our mind against whatever political system we were living within if we felt there was unjust circumstances to speak out about. So we moved back to England about a year later, but I felt very strongly connected to Iran, and I felt as if I'd left my country.
I was in one environment where I didn't really identify with my peers, the mates I knocked around with, and they didn't really understand me either. I was kind of unusual to them, which sometimes was good, sometimes not. But it was quite difficult to actually feel comfortable just asserting where I was from.
My mum could not leave my dad in Zambia because it's just taboo, you just don't do it, and she wouldn't have had any support, and she would have had to go back. So for her to leave my dad, she had to stay here. When my dad was on a residency here, there was quite a violent incident, and she was hospitalised, and then she just said one day, I just can't take this anymore, so she left him, and he went to immigration and said, she can't leave me because, you know, I brought her here and my visa says I've got to go back, so, you know, need to send her back.
I didn't have a choice of freedom, that it was actually an order by my father that he wanted his family to be united in England.
My sense of identity and my sense of background as I was growing up was always very much Iranian.
We had a big anti-deportation campaign, which was the Mandakunda Defence Campaign. And we used to all wear T-shirts saying you can't beat a woman, and the Mandakunda Defence Campaign ran alongside the Viraj Mendes campaign. 1,000 people from Manchester marched all the way to London to 10 Downing Street to tell Maggie Thatcher, let them stay.
It was big sad really, because I don't think if I have a choice, I don't think I would come to this country.
I do search, and I'm always interested in other people, other cultures, other ways of living, and searching for a sense of my own individual identity.
I met lots of really strong women who managed to stand up for what it is that they believed in, for their personal rights and personal wants, and, you know, I don't want to be treated this way, so I'm going to make a stand and, you know, go for what it is that I really want to have, and sometimes that meant having to go through a deportation campaign.
We spent about a year just sitting and discussing ideas, what the link was between each other, looking at each other's work. We did presentations for each other, and then we had time to respond and discuss how our work, you know, fitted with other people's practice.
I saw it as something that was about the dilemmas involved for somebody who has to leave their home and come to another country and seek asylum, and then the power structures that operated within that person's life to determine the outcome. If you're in a position where you're seeking asylum or where you're travelling to another country, or where you're constantly travelling, you're constantly trying somewhere that will accept you. So you're repeatedly making asylum claims in different countries and having to watch your back and change your identity and so on. What do you hang on to?
I'd heard that immigration was horrible and that they'd done horrible things, and I'd seen how horrible they were to Viraj Mendis, kind of, because he was chained to the radiators and stuff. But that whole process, I think we all were moved and kind of steps on a journey.
And we discussed about our own sense of who we are and why we are and where we are, our own sense of identity.
It really made us think about how lucky we had been not to have experienced anything so horrible, but also how the system is and how certain people are trained to think of immigrants as less than human.
And if the tables were turned and Home Office officials ended up having to seek asylum, they would be doing exactly the same. They would be seeking exactly the same things.
After watching the videos of how people had been treated, we didn't kind of want to humanise the people, but Tan Lin did.
She was very moved by this official involved in the IMF who, through one of their policies, he had actually knew that a number of people would die as a result. And he was sitting there just as a very human person.
What I saw was something kind of, how could human being make those decisions, because of greed and wanted more profit, that they are prepared to make policies where thousands of people suffer.
The poetry that she did drove many of the fundamental ideas, and her job was to bring together a lot of the discussions that we had together with the research to form the skeleton of what the installation was going to become.
The mother and child, kind of human decide for the dream, which is through the 58 people, and then the refugees. I think they all have kind of a similar theme.
The visual approach to it was quite interesting. It was very influenced by Tang Lin's ideas of keeping things very simple and very bare.
The fact that the rafts are on water and the actors are wearing masks, and that the Home Office is in one raft, and that people are wearing non-identifiable kind of garments, and the just the sense of I'm not real.
My job as the director and the filmmaker was to kind of turn her poetry into a shooting script. I constructed the various acts that people would do, which seemed to mirror but not represent. It was kind of a metaphoric way of mirroring some of the ideas that we've been talking about.
I had lots of glass because you see through things and you can see reflections upon things. And then the blue from the Shiranish video that we saw is where the water thing kind of came through.
The water's quite disturbing, especially because the raft looks a bit precarious on the water, and you realise that there's a very limited period of time that the person is going to survive on this water.
The waters between Spain and Africa are just littered with dead bodies from people who are trying to come to seek asylum. So water is very important because water is the graveyard for so many people.
The sea and the blood were two very strong elements, that the idea of opposites being equal, because the blood represents death and life both at the same time. Blood emerges because of her injury, but then she turns it around to using it as a fuel that can be lit. Her own injury she turns into something powerful.
If her children had been lost or left behind, even if she had them with her, she needed to be strong. But we also needed to show that there are wounds kind of in that process, and how do you carry on and get the strength to continue.
What is a child and what is a mother? Are they really different, or are they the same in the sense of what they really desire?
Those photographs that the daughter and the mother were pulling on barbed wire from the water were echoes to me, were perfect echoes of those memories, those fragments of memories that exist within us from our childhood, our background, our experiences, the people we knew, the people we left.
Her trying to piece them all up together is a lot like how we try and piece our lives together, you know, and sometimes it doesn't always make sense. The immigration guy, yeah, he's a human person, but it also needs to be shown that the people who make the decisions about who stays and who goes and who has war when, you know, kind of, because war abroad means peace at home.
The way people are dehumanised, but also they've got a puppet-like appearance. I wanted to create this sense that the scenario we're watching, that people are kind of like puppets. In other words, they're not necessarily behaving in the way that anybody wants to, that there's some forces outside.
We got the toys, you know, and that's literally how they treat kind of really big issues like, you know, like the Iraq War and like everything that's happening in the Middle East, you know.
When I saw the news about what happened at Tiananmen Square, something kind of touched me very deep. I was overwhelmed by what I saw on the news. That it was both really that the beauty and suffering. You know, this group of people preparing to give their life for freedom, whatever that means. And then there is a group of people being threatened by that demand, and in reaction, they use the power or authority to kill those people.
On one hand, horrendous, terrible situation. On the other hand, that makes one feel not beautiful, makes one feel like a piece of shit, an animal. Yet at the same time, the beauty inherently within each person. I wanted the voice to show that it was striving for freedom against the structures of authority and power, and a sense of movement, though, constantly movement, seeking, searching, the natural soul's yearning for freedom, and at the same time, optimism, hope, and tragedy all in the same space.
People who are from other places who don't necessarily have a voice and who kind of come over here, I think are going to be made stronger, knowing and seeing and understanding or being able to talk about certain issues through art. And I think that's why art is really important, because it makes you talk about stuff